You ever walk into a room so bright, so full of money and power, that you almost feel the air pushing you back, letting you know you don't belong? Aspen Pines was like that, the kind of place where the windows shine gold at sunset and the lake looks like glass, where the rich come to remind each other just how rich they are. I was there too, not as a guest, not even clothes, just a maid in a pressed gray uniform, moving so quietly that half the time people didn't even notice I existed. And that's the trick, right? Stay invisible, keep your head down, and you'll survive another day. That's what I thought until the night I decided not to disappear. Nobody recognized me at that corporate retreat, not even Elliot Vance, strutting around with his perfect hair and his $1,000 smile, handing out speeches about leadership like the world owed him a round of applause. He walked right past me, the same way he walked past every maid, every cook, every busboy. But you know what's funny? 8 years before, he knew my name. He knew how to pronounce it, too, back when he called roll at Georgetown Law and looked me right in the eye like he already knew what my future would look like. Yeah, that happened. But it only took one spilled drink and one sentence to turn his face pale as paper, to freeze the laughter in that room and make every executive suddenly remember there was a maid standing right there, watching. You want the truth? It didn't start with a glass of wine and a ruined shirt. It started long before, back in a lecture hall packed so tight you could barely breathe, with Elliot Vance talking about the greater good and shareholder value. I was 21, full of hope and stubbornness, maybe too much of both. I challenged him, right there, asked if ethics meant anything when you only cared about the money. He smiled, that tight professor smile, and told me I should review the basics before I try to challenge established principles. And something shifted. You could feel it like the lights dimmed, just for me. After that, he started looking for ways to knock me down, subtle at first, then less and less subtle until there was no way up for me at all. But let me back up a sec. That night at the resort, it was all champagne flutes, designer suits, and laughter echoing off marble. I was invisible, collecting empty glasses and cleaning up messes before anyone could even register I was there, except for one executive, Claire Harper. She was different. She saw me, thanked me. There was a look in her eye like she remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, and maybe she did because she made it to the top the hard way. But before she could say anything else, Elliot Vance arrived, making sure every head turned his way. He took the stage, gave his speech about knowing your place and demanding your worth, and the room lapped at you except for me, in the corner, biting my tongue and thinking how easy it was for him to talk about worth when nobody ever tried to take his away. Things got messy after dinner, literally. Some junior exec, desperate to impress, spilled red wine on Elliot's perfect white shirt. He exploded, humiliated the kid, then found me on my knees, cleaning up the mess. "Can't you people do anything right?" he snapped, voice sharp enough to cut glass. The room went silent. I felt everyone's eyes on me, some with sympathy, most just afraid he'd turn on them next. I stood up, looked him dead in the eye, and said it. "You taught me more than you know, Professor Vance." That's it. Just one sentence. But you could feel the shock ripple out. Elliot went white, and for a moment, he didn't know what to do. That's when things got interesting. The head of housekeeping, Marjorie, tough as nails, stepped in, told me to go clean the East Wing. I left without another word. I could hear him telling Marjorie to fire me, and her voice, steady as a rock, telling him she'd handle it tomorrow. That's how you survive in a place like that. You protect your own, even when nobody's watching. Later, back in the staff break room, everyone was buzzing. Martha, who'd been scrubbing floors since before I was born, gave me a look I'll never forget. "Girl, you got guts." Did I know him? Yeah, I did. But there are some stories that don't need to be told twice, you know what I mean? Alone in my room that night, I pulled out my old legal textbook, the one I kept hidden with my diploma stamped disbarred like a scar. There was a note tucked inside, "Don't let him win again." I hadn't let go of that, not really. But out in the executive cabins, Claire Harper was on her laptop, digging through old university records, piecing together the past. She called a friend, asked about a Serena Jackson at Georgetown Law. The story started to unravel, just enough for her to see the outline of the truth. Next morning, Malcolm Vance Elliott's son, The one who watched his dad burn me down the night before found me by the lake, cleaning windows. He tried to apologize for his father. I told him not to bother. But he wanted to know if I'd really been his father's student. You remind me of him before the mask, I told him. Because that's the truth. People change when power changes them. Claire showed up, saw us talking, and her curiosity was sharp as ever. She pressed me for answers, and I told her to meet me after my shift. Some stories you can't tell until you know someone will actually listen. Let me drop a twist in here. Claire went looking for Rebecca Winters, Elliot's old assistant, the one who'd vanished 5 years back after accounting errors that weren't hers. She found Rebecca running an art gallery now, a survivor with her own scars. Turns out, she'd caught Elliot skimming from the books, and when she spoke up, he made her disappear. Rebecca's advice was blunt. Tell Serena to walk away. He won't stop until she's ruined again. But you see, that's not what I do anymore. Meanwhile, Malcolm started digging too, looking at his father's company with new eyes. He and Claire went to a storage unit in the city, found records, NDAs, settlement agreements, and the real smoking gun. Letters Elliot wrote, glowing references for students he liked, and brutal character assassinations for those he didn't. Mine was right there, every lie spelled out in black and white. By the time they brought me the evidence, I already knew what I'd do. We had one shot to tell the board the truth before Elliot could bury it. So, the next morning, before the executives could even finish their coffee, I walked into that boardroom no longer in my maid's uniform, but in a simple blouse and slacks, head high. I told my story, not as a victim, but as someone who refused to stay silent. Claire and Malcolm backed me up, showed the pattern, the letters, the NDAs. Elliot lost it, tried to turn it all back on me, called me unstable, said it was all a vendetta. That's when the private investigator he hired, Detective Keller, walked in, holding a flash drive full of email records, financial irregularities, proof of everything. Keller handed it over, said he found the truth and wasn't working for Elliot anymore. The board asked Elliot to step outside. Some want him gone right away, some wanted more time. I sat with Claire and Malcolm in a small room, waiting. What happens now? I asked. Best case, the board removes him. Worst case, we all lose our jobs. But it was worth it. Then the story hit the new CEO accused of sabotage, fraud, the works. Elliot went on TV, played the victim, called us bitter, tried to spin the story. It almost worked for a second. But then more women started coming forward, former assistants, housekeeping staff, even board members' own relatives. The narrative changed, and suddenly it wasn't just about me. Elliot hit back with a $10 million lawsuit, trying to scare us into silence. But I learned something after 8 years. Discovery goes both ways, and he had way more to lose if this went to court. He backed off, the SEC started poking around, and the board offered me a settlement. I didn't do this for money, I told Claire. She offered me something more, a new job, head of ethics and employee advocacy, the chance to actually change things from the inside out. I took it, but on 2 conditions. I'd finish my law degree, and the company would change its name. No more Vance Consulting. Integrity Partners. That felt right. First day, as a director, I walked into the headquarters, every head turning. Claire introduced me. Please welcome the only woman here who's already cleaned up our mess twice. Even the executives laughed, the kind of laughter that means maybe things are really different this time. 6 months later, the old portrait of Elliot had been replaced by a wall of handwritten notes, one sentence that changed someone's life. I ran a mentorship program for women like me, started a new ethics code, rewrote how complaints were handled, made real pathways for people at the bottom to rise. Malcolm's nonprofit for corporate accountability was thriving. The culture shifted slowly, stubbornly, but it shifted. There was one last twist. 1 year after that night in the ballroom, I stood at Georgetown giving a lecture on ethics, awarded an honorary degree for work I never thought would count. A student, black like me, came up and told me she stayed in law school because of my story. I nearly cried. Everything I'd survived, everything I'd fought for, it wasn't just for me anymore. 5 years on, I was sitting on a stage at the National Press Club, keynote speaker at a corporate ethics summit, my law degree hanging on my office wall, The name Integrity Partners shining on the building outside. Elliot? He tried to come back with a memoir, but honestly, he's just another ghost in the past now. I kept my old maid's uniform in a shadow box not to remember the shame, but to remember the fight, to remember how much one sentence can change. You want to know the real ending? There isn't one, not really. The world doesn't give you neat little bows. Every day, new stories start, new women fighting, new men learning, old power try claw its way back. I teach now, I mentor, I build. Some nights, I look out at the city lights, remembering how close I came to giving up. Not anymore. So, what would you sacrifice to speak your truth in a world that wants you silent? That's the question. One sentence at a time, that's how you change the story. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for yours. If you've ever been silenced, or if you've ever found the courage to speak, share your story below, because one sentence really can change everything.